So, hello everyone, but he is incredible. This 14-year-old kid, Erdogmuş. You see, I learned how to pronounce his name, and you're going to have to learn how to pronounce his name too. Only 14 years old. Carlsen said about him that there has never been a chess player in history at 14 years old as strong as Erdogmuş. And he's right, honestly, he might be the future world champion. This kid is incredible. A few days ago, I already showed you one of his very impressive victories. If you haven't seen it, click on the link above. And now he's going to have a lot of fun against Vladimir Fedoseev. He's just a kid, Erdogmuş. Well, he's going to play. He's going to play against the experienced Grandmaster Fedoseev. Let's watch. He starts with e4. e5 is played. King f3, king f6, the Russian defense. A defense that's known to be very solid. Solidity, we'll come back to that in this game. kv5. Black played d6. They chase the knight before recapturing the pawn on e4, that's standard, d4, d5, bishop d3. This has all been played hundreds of thousands of times. Bishop d6, kingside castling, c4. Trying to lure the pawn on d5 away from the center. And of course, to weaken the knight, so c6, we reinforce. Rook e1, we put pressure on the knight. Rook e8, we defend, and queen b3. That puts pressure on d5 and on b7, making it harder to develop the bishop on c8. Nevertheless, the pawn on d5 can't be taken. Black played knight a6. So why can't we take the pawn? d5, do I really need to show you why? If you capture on d5, the white queen is left unprotected against the black queen. But the bishop can move to give check. White can, of course, capture this bishop, but they lose their queen on d5. So, of course, as you understand, we can't take the pawn on d5. But let's first understand why black played knight a6 just before. It's not easy for them because if they play king d7, this time the pawn on d5 can be taken. So the knight on b8 does not have the square d7, and the bishop on c8 cannot develop because of the pressure on the pawn b7. So black's queen side is having trouble completing its development. That's why the knight comes to a6 on the edge of the board. And here, the usual continuations are taking on d5, followed by knight to c3 or the c5 push. But here, Erdogmuş is going to play a very rare move. He's going to play the pawn to a3. h6 a été joué. King d2, on triple les attaques sur le knight noir qui revient en f6. Échange des rooks, rook prend échec, queen prend échec. c5, on repousse le bishop qui vient en c7. Et kf1 pour libérer le bishop et repositionner le knight blanc. On va en reparler about this knight f1. It was on b1, it came to d2, then f1, then g3, and it has a bright future ahead. This knight is going to be a real treat for the eyes. Do you like forks? You're going to be in for a treat. You need to have a good fork move here. You need to have an appetite, and you'll see what's about to happen. Knight b8. The knight is actually badly placed. It's trying to reposition itself. Knight g3, knight to e4, and now knight to h1. And now we're going to understand why the knight is living on h1. White are threatening. Bishop takes pawn on h6. Oh, I know it's black's turn to play, but let me show you. We're threatening bishop takes h6, because if pawn takes, there's this f6 square for a fork on king-queen. You might say the knight is defending, but we could play bishop takes knight. And in fact, the pawn can't recapture because of the royal fork king-queen. But if it's the queen that recaptures, there's still a royal fork on king-queen. So, in this position, black can't recapture, but as a result, white have regained the piece they sacrificed, with interest, since the black king's shelter has been dismantled. So now we understand the bishop threat. Takes h6. It's the g7 pawn and the knight that are holding the f6 square to prevent royal forks. So the threats are bishop takes h6 to deflect the pawn on g7, then bishop takes knight to eliminate the defender of the square f6. And that's why Fedoseev plays bishop to d8. He brings his bishop back to keep an eye on the square f6. Bishop to f4, black play g5, they attack the bishop. And here comes the move that made me jump out of my chair. So it's true that the computer prefers bishop d6 in this position, but bishop c7 was played. Magnificent to deflect the black bishop from protecting the square f6. So bishop takes c7 was played, bishop takes e4. We understood that neither the pawn nor the queen should capture because of this fork on f6. So black played knight to d7. But actually that's a mistake. They should have played queen to d8 to get out of the fork threats while still controlling the square f6. But as I told you, it was knight to d7 that was played. And so, bishop to f5, we're threatening to take the knight, and whether the bishop or the queen recaptures, there's still that royal fork on f6. It's crazy, all the forks that this knight is threatening. The queen comes to d8, and there are going to be more squares of forks. Rook to e1 is played, king to h8. So, really now? Black have moved the queen and the king aside to avoid any more fork threats on f6. But soon there will be forks on f7 with the other knight. But for now, it's queen e3 that is played. The threat is serious. We're threatening queen e8 anyway, with a mating attack. I know it's black's move, but let me show you. Queen e8 on queen takes, we recapture from the rook, knight takes and rook, takes knight checkmate. The knight against the black square and the bishop against the white square. And on queen e8, if the knight comes to f8, we can take the pawn on f7, still with the threat. Queen g7, checkmate. So queen e3, the rook and the queen on the column, ready to arrive at e8. The bishop controlling the white square, the knight controlling the black square. The other knight will soon move closer to e5, I think, to put pressure on nf7, while none of the black pieces are playing. And the king is on h8 on the other side of the board, all alone. Knight f8 has been played. The knight moves up to e5 to threaten the fork on f7. Queen e7, just defended. So here, in this position, I first looked at knight g6 check, thinking I was going to win the queen. But in reality, it doesn't work very well, and r2 isn't going to play this idea. Why doesn't it work well? After knight g6 check, black can recapture with the knight. We've lost a knight. Granted, we'll win it back by infiltrating the position. It is a position that is much better for white, but much less strong than what r2 is about to get. Moreover, black could take the bishop on f5. It's true that we can take the bishop on c7. The advantage is white's, but we can get much more. And that's why r2 won't play kg6. He'll play fc8, rook takes, and still isn't looking to play kg6. He'll move the queen to h3. Now, this threatens king 6, which is checked, by the way, to pick up the queen. But obviously, with the queen on h3, we're attacking the rook and facing the king. Rook e8 is played, kg3, we're attacking the h6 pawn, king h7. Knight f5, we're attacking the queen and threatening. Queen takes h6, check supported by the knight, so queen. e6 comes to defend the rook on e3. The queen shifts to f6 to try to defend and to get out of line with the rook, of course, and here comes yet another extraordinary move that you had to think of. I don't know if I would have thought of it during a game. And you, will you think of it? You can pause the video. What will Erdogmus play in this position? So, do you have an idea? Well, she's going to play knight takes h6, knight takes h6. The idea is to deflect the black queen in order to then gain access to the f5 square. And when you get to f5, you attack the king and the pawn on f7. The queen can't come to g6 because of the knight. So it's the knight that comes to g6, but queen takes f7, check, queen to g7. Rook to h3, check and strong, but he's going to take the rook on e8. Bishop takes. Now rook to h3, check. And you're not done being surprised. Look at knight to h4. The knight is pinned. We take back the bishop. King to h6 is played. g3, on the attack, the knight is pinned. A scam attempt by Grandmaster Fedoseev with queen to h8. He still threatens. Queen to b1, checkmate, since the knight controls the g2 square. And look at this absolutely beautiful finish. Queen to e6, check. So of course the black queen can come to g6. But this position is lost because we can take, the king recaptures, and we win the knight, and of course we have an extra rook. So here there was king h5, and it ends with pawn to g4, checkmate. The queen protects, the pawn attacks, the queen traps. An incredible finish with this attack on the file, the pawn coming to attack the king, an opening that is nevertheless considered reputable with black. And you saw how Erdogmus completely shattered this opening. Incredible. This child against a player rated over 2,700, a very, very experienced grandmaster, does this feat. So let's look at the standings with one round to go. There's still one game left to play. These standings can still change because at the time I'm recording this video, some games are still ongoing. But look where he is. Erdogmus, he has 6.5 points here. So he's in 6th place, but actually tied for 4th with Niemann. So don't hesitate to leave me comments, likes, share the video, and support the channel. And as usual, we'll meet again for more great adventures on the chessboard. Goodbye, everyone.